Alrighty, well today I'm going to be talking about wetland conservation and importance. So to start things off, there's a lot of different types of wetlands all across the country, kind of showing wetlands are not a thing, it's not a regional thing. These are kind of areas where they're found all across the nation. So nationwide importance. Uh, just a couple different examples. The most standard kind of one is a marsh. You might see these driving down the road or near the rivers and lakes like that. You'll see just a lot of standing water, a lot of cattails, reeds. And then as you go across the country, you'll find like swamps where there's trees, kind of like in these pictures here in the top, where there's more trees in the water. Uh, get out west, you'll actually find like fen and bogs. They're kind of more with peatlands. Uh, and then going down to like up farther north, you'll find like open water ones, where it's kind of like a transition between different lakes that go to and connect to each other. Uh, there'll be some reeds and bulrushes that connect those lakes together. And then estuaries are down on basically anywhere where a river will meet the ocean. It's kind of where the freshwater and saltwater mix uh, and makes it a tidal wave, basically. Uh, so, why are these wetlands so important? Well, they're a valuable ecosystem, and some researchers have said it's one of the most valuable ecosystems and that you can compare these almost to like a coral reef or to a rainforest. But one thing they do is they act like a natural sponge, basically. They do a couple different things. They can actually slow down the flooding of a river and create like a buffer zone. Another thing they can do, the way that their soil and then the all the aquatic plants that live there, is that they can actually filter out impurities and pollutants from the water. So think of like your hard metals, your lead, your zinc, stuff like that. They can actually filter it out of the water and make it cleaner. That's why so much can live in wetlands as good, clean water. So it also improves the water quality. And then a couple places they use them almost like a water treatment plant, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. Another thing is they provide a habitat for a wide range of species. In Canada alone, they actually have over 600 different individual species that rely on wetlands. Anything from microscopic bacteria to larger big fish like northern pike and even birds of prey. And even like deer and moose rely on them. So there's a wide range of species that love these wetlands. It's kind of like their own little oasis almost. Another thing it does is it reduces erosion. All these plants that are keeping the soil intact when there's heavy rains or there's a flooding that happens on the river, it won't just sweep all that sediment downstream and cause worse uh, erosion to happen and other environmental problems. One thing that it reduces, like for the estuaries, is that it doesn't let that sediment run out into the coral reefs and remember the coral basically can kill it. Another thing it does is it recharges the groundwater, the aquifers, because it does remove a lot of hard metals and impurities from the water. It can actually push water back down into the water table, and it keeps that aquifer at a very safe level to where if you have a well or something and you dig into the ground, that water level will stay the same. So they're quite important. There's also, though, a lot of economic and cultural benefits to wetlands. Uh, like I said before, they have a wide range of species that live in these different wetlands, and a lot of those that we actually consume. There's a lot of different types of fish, crawfish, frogs, shellfish, a lot of stuff to use those estuaries, not only to live, but also for their young to live. A lot of those use like in the estuaries and smaller swamps like that, they will lay eggs up shallow, and the young will stay there, and then when they get big enough and mature, they'll swim back out towards the ocean. And just down like in the Louisiana, Texas area, along the Gulfs and stuff, uh, they also bring that economic value. So 75% of the commercial and 90% of recreational catch of fish and shellfish depend on wetlands because that's where their young go. They actually seen in one study areas that had a reduced amount of estuaries on those areas, the catch dropped off as well. And then another thing they do is they make a basically a natural buffer zone against natural disasters. Like I said in the last slide, it reduces a lot of flooding when like rivers and stuff when heavy rains. But another thing is that it primarily keeps down hurricanes. So when a hurricane sweeps through an area, those estuaries keep it as a buffer, and the flooding isn't as dramatic as if areas that don't have them, which we've seen in a couple of hurricanes within the past couple of years. So what's happening to these wetlands? Well, a lot of stuff is being altered for human use and activities. A lot of them are being cleared for making room for more farmland. They're being drained to be plowed over to have room for crops. Another thing is they're creating areas for subdivisions in urban areas. So they're draining these different wetlands so they can build like a shopping center or more houses. Uh, some places are even like eliminating these swamps so they can redesign like the river navigation and flood control. Well, what they call flood control, but in reality, these wetlands are already doing a great job in being flood control. But they believe they can do it better, so they'll drain them and build like levees and dams, and they'll basically make navigation a little bit easier for like bigger boats and stuff. But this is here is just a fun fact. There's around 220 million acres of wetlands across North America, and between 1780 and 1980, over half has been altered in some way, either drained and gone, filled in and used, or just changed. So 110 million acres of wetlands has been gone. Basically, this is destroying this valuable habitat that these species rely on, and it's costing a lot of economic benefits that we're no longer being able to use anymore. When that stuff is gone, stuff that we rely on, different shellfish and fish, the price of them goes up higher. So it's just making it harder for some of us to get more of those foods that we like and are used to. So I actually found me a study over in Sweden uh, by this gentleman Thurier. What he did was he was comparing a mature pond that was already there, that was several years old, and they created these dual purpose wetlands. He wanted to see if in local and regionally if it would help the agriculture in those areas, like farmlands. So he was building these dual purpose wetlands to try and help benefit not only the animals there that live in the wetlands or used to, but then the farmers themselves and see how it benefited them. And we have a graph down here, and what it tells is pretty cool. So we have this farthest one on here in chart A is basically the percentage density of those two. So the mature ponds has a higher density, but not by a whole lot. And over here on chart B, he has different sample sites that basically had the species accumulation. And you can see all these little black dots where he sampled on the mature ponds, and then these clearer circles are all of the dual purpose ones. And in almost all of them, except this guy here, their percentage was higher by a little bit on these two, but on these two for sure, way above the curve than the mature ponds. Over here on chart C, you can see this is actually the population density for both areas total, and they're almost even, which is good. But the greatest thing is down here in chart D. As you can tell, this is a little pie chart of all the different species that was found in those areas. The dual purpose wetlands over here has way more a variety of species, making that species richness better for the dual purpose wetlands. Um, but basically, what he found uh, was telling that it worked really well. The study did. Uh, he also found over here he wanted to really do them more from around like the Baltic Sea to reduce the amount of nitrogen leakage that was going into it from the farmers around that area because he knew wetlands take out those impurities and they clean the water. So there's less nitrogen leaking into the Baltic Sea. That's also less algae blooms that are affecting coral reefs over there. But he also found that these dual purpose wetlands it sustained the locally pretty good, but it really impacted the regional on species richness. Had more biodiversity, had more different species, and had just as high of a population, which is a great benefit. So how can we protect these wetlands? There's a couple different ways we can do this from. There's actually quite a few different organizations that work to create and protect the wetlands. The Ducks Unlimited and the Conservation Fund are two main ones. The Ducks Unlimited especially because they really do care about wetland conservation. But what they'll do is they'll actually buy different wetlands that people own to make them like protected areas to where they will not be altered if they were thinking about altering them. And then they'll help go to places and help restore wetlands back to what they should have been historically. And then a couple things they do is they'll install like water pumps and levee installations so they can keep the water level where it should be so that people don't try and like drain it. Or if there is like a really bad drought, they can put water into it to where those species that live there can still survive. And then you can volunteer and learn with both of these different organizations, and there's many more to do so as well. But that's another thing is just to learn and volunteer and actually see what takes place there. A couple other ways we can help is planting native flora. Uh, Planting those native species is just going to help keep invasive species out that can overtake some of these wetlands. And it can also help reduce ground erosion to help protect them so that these wetlands don't fill in with sediment and then become useless. Another one, using less chemicals. I mean, I know I talked about it how good wetlands are at taking impurities out of the water, but using less chemicals is going to help a lot of those plants and animals that live there. So using less of those. And another one is just to conserve your water. Uh, Shower, taking shorter showers, not letting the water run when you shave or brush your teeth, stuff like that. And then a lot of people do is actually use a water barrel. At the state fair up in Illinois, I know they actually have a drawing each year. These water barrels, you can actually collect rainwater off your roof, and then you can store it and then use them for later on, so you don't have to use as much groundwater, the aquifers, which these wetlands are pumping in. So there's a lot of different ways you can help protect and conserve wetlands. That is all. These are my sources, and that is all for this presentation. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you later.